and thanks for tuning in to today's show. Today's show is a conversation, a webinar with Microfocus and Microsoft, and we're going to be talking about how these two companies help customers such as the Belgian payroll company Sdworks modernize mainframe infrastructure towards more modern cloud-based apps and services. Today I have with us in the studio from Microfocus, I have Philippe Leyland. Good morning, Philippe.
Thanks very much. Good morning, Tony.
Thanks very much for being with us today. Good morning, everybody. And online we have Philippe van Gorp from Sdworks, who's talking to us from Antwerp in Belgium. Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
We also have Richard Gamblin from Microsoft, who's joining us from Gloucestershire in the UK. Hello, Richard.
Good morning.
We are talking about modernizing mainframe infrastructure towards a more modern cloud-based service of apps and services. To start off this conversation, I think the most appropriate starting point would be to talk with the customer Sdworks. Philip, can you introduce to us Sdworks as a company? Who are you? What do you do? And why do you have a need to upgrade, to modernize your mainframe infrastructure?
Yes. Well, Sdworks is a leading provider of people solutions, originated in Belgium, but meanwhile expanded across Europe. We provide solutions across the full employee life cycle, as we call it. So that goes from recruitment of people, then onboarding them, then providing core HR solutions, and then, of course, very important, the payroll and reward aspects, but also workforce management for the employers itself, and then talent and career management. And in one of the domains, the payroll and reward business, that is typically the business for where it all started very long time ago. Which means that in that area, we see a couple of older systems still hanging around, some systems which we could consider as legacy, however, still very valuable and containing a lot of intellectual property, which was built up over the last decades. And it's in that area that I'm working most of the time. So I'm an enterprise architect, and I'm seeking for long-term solutions in order to keep the risks related to that legacy under control, and also make sure that we can modernize and evolve the systems as needed in order to make sure that we can keep up with the requests coming from our customers, of course.
So Sdworks was a pioneer in digitizing systems, going right back to the 1960s and 1970s. So you do have that issue of legacy systems, and when we're talking legacy systems, we're talking IBM mainframe computers and applications written in COBOL. Can you just give us an idea of what that means exactly? What is a mainframe and what is COBOL? And from there, talk to us about why there is a need to modernize this infrastructure in terms of the hardware and the software.
Yeah, so as you already clearly described, those systems have already a very long lifespan. So they were their initial conception was somewhere. Some of the systems we have are dating back from the early 80s, which was already a revision of an earlier form of more or less the same system, but meaning that they are a couple of decades old. So indeed, depending on mainframe platform, which is a kind of a platform which is there still hanging around a lot on the market, just because of the fact that these type of COBOL applications are just at that time in the past, it was best fit for purpose, of course, to run it on such type of central computer. Also, in our case, it was payroll-related activities, meaning huge batch change of COBOL programs, making sure that the correct payroll calculations can be done in a compliant way, and that then the necessary external effects could be generating pay slips, providing declarations, billing, and so on. So there's a lot of functionality embedded in that systems, which is still very valuable today as well, because those systems, they are typically bound to legislation on tax ruling, on social security, etc. So they were kept up to date over the last decades, meaning they're still up to date and very valuable. But of course, the IT landscape has changed meanwhile. And for that, especially from a development perspective, and that's the first thing that we're addressing now, is that we want to modernize the development environment in order to mitigate the risks that we see there.
What risks do we need to mitigate, and how are you going to do that?
Well, generally speaking, we want to make sure that the system as a whole is as agile as possible. That means, in my opinion, two different types of agility. First of all, there is the more process-related agility, meaning that you want your developers to be able to run with modern tools, aligned with common contemporary development practices, and so that they can really apply the agile concepts as they were written, also for those older applications. Secondly, you can change the process, of course, and you can change tools, but on the other hand, as long as the application is still a very big monolithic application with all functionalities interwoven with each other, then it's still hard to go really agile. So that means that we also need capabilities to slice the big elephant in pieces. And with the original set of tools that we have on the mainframe, it's very hard. You really need modern contemporary tools to manage the COBOL with, maybe to put APIs on certain elements, slice it up, and that's, in my opinion, the second reason why we're doing this journey. And maybe last but not least, by doing all these things and leveraging the Microfocus technology, we also are positioned to, if we want, but that's certainly something which is not decided yet, but that we have the capability to also run that COBOL IP of the mainframe. For example, in a cloud, in a distributed cloud environment. But that's really long-term thinking. All the capabilities that are delivered by Microsoft and Microfocus give us multiple possibilities and allows us to buy some additional time to think for each of the functional areas, how do we see them evolving? Because for me, it's always a hybrid approach. You cannot say we just do a big bang approach, or we're going to replace it by commercial off-the-shelf package or rewrite it, because you also need to think about budgetary restrictions, opportunity cost when you start working on these type of projects. So it's really about getting more time to think about the future of that IP still hanging around there. And then next to that, of course, make sure that for the business as usual, improve the current state by doing things more efficiently and effectively, even for that older systems.
Okay, so Philippe Leyland, who's with us in the studio, is from Microfocus. Can you introduce Microfocus and talk to us a little bit about the journey, how you're helping Sdworks along this journey of modernizing their infrastructure?
Yes, Tony. So yes, Microfocus, 40 years in the business. We're something like $3 billion company, public company, where our main focus, our main portfolio, about 300 products, is really turned to help customers go into this transformation, this, let's say, digital transformation, so the challenges that they have in front of them. And as I said earlier on, during the preparation, Tony, it was that customers have multiple choices, from the rip and replace approach to run and transform. Here, Sdworks has typically chosen the run and transform, where they're using the high technologies that Microfocus and Microsoft can provide them to actually bring their investment into the new world.
So it's keeping everything that's valuable about COBOL and all the information and the data and the IP that they hold, and making that evolve slowly towards a different setup. Is that right? So evolution, not revolution.
Exactly. I think that's the key value coming out of this is you're going to go on to a transformation which is going to be less a revolution, so less high drama, more low drama type of projects, but accomplishing the end goal, which is you want to go towards digitalization. So you maybe start by being cloud ready. You might be converging your development life cycles with the new technologies, so that your, let's say, legacy developers can start working with the new Java developers or the .NET developers of your office.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask. COBOL being quite an old, one of the original programming languages. Are developers, new talent coming onto the jobs market, are they familiar with this language? Is this something that is a little bit old school?
I think that's some of the challenges that Philip was explaining was, finding these type of skills, but bringing them into the same type of tooling, using the same approach in the life cycle development allows to bring them together. So it's bridging the old and the new, I think, and that's what's quite interesting in this situation, because somehow, to do financial or move financial data, you most probably can discuss about if COBOL is not the best language to do that. Okay, so that's I think is the essence: is use the right language, but change the tooling, make it easier, and bring it into the future.
Okay, I want to go back to Philip in Sdworks in Antwerp. What's the end goal for you? Because Philippe has talked to us about evolving towards a new setup, a new infrastructure, and that there are many steps and there are many end goals that can be envisioned. What is the end goal for Sdworks?
Well, I think the nice summary is what Philippe said was the run and transform. That's more or less a summary of what I was stating earlier in the call. It's really about making sure that we can tackle the most urgent legacy-related risks, but on the other end also give us additional time to think more in depth on, for each of those functional areas, where we want to go with it. Is it for maybe we might still decide for certain specific functional areas to do a rip and replace, and others do a rewrite, and others just keep the COBOL code and modernize it. But that takes time, and with the current approach of run and transform, we can satisfy both needs. We can modernize, keep the developers up to pace, and close the gap between that distributed and that mainframe environment already, to foster collaboration at that level by providing them a modern tool set, which are already things that we see now currently. For example, we have two C# developers, which also have now Microfocus tooling installed on their laptops, allowing them to also check and review COBOL code. That means that that a certain burden was removed to do that, because COBOL on its own is not the most complicated language. It is quite readable, but it's the tooling to address it that makes it mainframe-only platform, very difficult to have younger and distributed people looking at it. So I think that are our main goals. Make things more efficient, more cost efficient as well, foster collaboration, because we do have distributed applications relying on COBOL applications. So there is also a concrete need to be able to see each other's code and in order to make things going more smooth, etc. And then on the other end, the end goal, it will be different, in my opinion, for each of those functions, or can be different for each of those functional areas. Maybe we might decide to also re-platform certain parts, but that's all work that still needs to be done. But it's clear by the way that we, the run and transform path that we've taken, that it offers us the most future possibilities to further evolve the current stack of intellectual property.
How have your teams reacted to working with Microfocus on this? What are the benefits for your people?
The benefits, maybe to go one step back, it's all about change management. You really need to take that COBOL developers for 200% in the journey from the beginning, so that you can clearly show them what advantages or what it could bring. Because typically what you see is that those type of people, we have developers working for 30 years within the company, working 30 years in more or less the same tool set, mainframe tool set. So for them, it's anyway a huge change that they need to undergo. Suddenly start working in a modern integrated development environment provided by Microfocus, and then having the build and deploy pipelines completely changed with Microsoft technology is a big change. On one end, there's of course, you need to make sure that you try to hide as much as possible the complexities behind it, that the developer experience is smooth and that they don't need to bother about too much details. On the other end, it's really about doing proper change management to onboard them from the beginning in the project. And by doing that, and that's something where we focused on a lot at the beginning of this journey, by including a couple of the crucial key developers in the project. And now we see that most of the people are really convinced that they're doing their job in a better, more efficient way as before, and we're still only halfway the journey. There's still a lot of additional advantages that will be released over the next couple of months or years. So for now, we have quite a good feedback from the development community, but you really need to invest in that change management perspective. You cannot simply drop the tool there with them, because that won't work.
Okay, so we're talking about change management, and we're talking about the future as an ongoing project. If I turn back to you, Philippe, from Microfocus's point of view, how does it work? There's a combination of cloud services with Microsoft, the enterprise COBOL suite. Tell me a bit about how Microfocus actually works to deliver, and what the roadmap is for putting these services in place.
So I think the main point is that we're going to bring tooling, which allows you to actually develop in the new modern ways. So taking Azure pipelines and trying to deploy your development lifecycle inside of these environments, and then you choose actually where you want to redeploy these developments. So it will then be pushed back onto the mainframe in the case of Sdworks, or actually pushed back onto the Azure cloud environment, which will allow you somehow to adjust with the workloads. You know, today when you create a service, you don't know how many consumers are going to consume. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, you would build an application for 10 people, 50, 100 of your employees. Now, most of your services will be available towards the internet, towards your end customers. And suddenly your application is going to need to have 1 million or 2 million people connecting to that application. And that, the mainframe is very non-agile in that space.
Yeah, and so the cloud services are much more agile. But if you could give us an idea of the benefits that your customers can enjoy from going through this transformation, what would the benefits be when you sell Microfocus?
Yeah.
What do you tell your customers the benefits will be?
So there's several benefits. One is you leverage your past investment.
Okay.
Secondly, you're going to get more agile. So in terms of development, you're going to increase the speed to market, time to market, because you'll increase it by maybe 30% in terms of time to market. So time to market is the second value. The third value, obviously, is a cost type of approach, cost reduction. Of course, these mainframe systems are very proprietary, very expensive to run, and the cloud platforms are definitely cheaper platforms to run.
Cheaper and more efficient. So I think we're going to turn to Richard Gamblin from Microsoft, who's here to talk to us about Microsoft Azure. If you could just give us an introduction, Richard, to how you work with Microsoft in order to Microfocus, in order to deliver these services to customers such as Sdworks.
Sure. So Microsoft Azure provides a foundation for organizations to build out new kinds of services or reimagine the way that existing services are delivered, whether that's right at the edge of the network, whether that's in public cloud, or whether that's on-prem as well. And if you think about organizations like Sdworks, they have a massive investment in their most critical systems, their core systems, including mainframe. And so the way that we work with Microfocus is to extend the contemporary technologies and processes that we have in Azure right into the heart of what mainframe can deliver and the applications that are being delivered on that platform. Okay.
From your perspective, Richard, from the Microsoft perspective, is COBOL as a language and the mainframe as an infrastructure, they've been around for a long, long time. Just because something is old doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, right?
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think there's a lot to be said for the kind of investment that Sdworks has made. If you think about what's encoded in those COBOL applications, that's really the intellectual capital that Sdworks has built up over the years. You know, we talked about digitization of those payroll systems right back from the 1960s. You know, as that's evolved over time, it's really captured the essence and the uniquely differentiating capabilities of Sdworks. And so one of the things that's so exciting about this approach is that it not only protects that investment, but also allows us to bring together the latest contemporary techniques for delivering that to market. And there are a number of different ways that this has been done, right? So in this case, we're talking about allowing multiple developers to work on the same code base. You know, what was there before? It was a one person developing at a time. Now we can have multiple people building this and creating it at the same time. We're able to do things with the Azure DevOps pipeline, so to be able to build and deliver in a consistent way every time, and not just for the mainframe applications, but any of the applications in the organization. And so from a skills perspective, somebody coming to this afresh can pick it up much more quickly and easily. And because they're using the same tooling, not only can they do that, but they can also make sure that the end-to-end service, whether that's embedded on the mainframe, whether that's in the mid-tier environment, or even in a smartphone or a browser, they're all rolled out in synchronization. And that means you can bring new ideas to market much, much faster.
If I turn to Philip from Sdworks, you're the customer, you're the person who needs that agility, you're the person that needs that faster time to market. Have you found that working on the Azure platform, working with Microsoft and Microfocus, has that given you the agility that you've been looking for?
Well, it's still a process that we are going through currently, but we clearly see, as Richard also already stated, that it is that we now have distributed people, so not knowing anything about mainframe, setting up pipelines which are also used for that mainframe part. So also for that part, it's already a big win that we don't need to invest anymore in mainframe specific knowledge. So I think that is one of the key reasons why we really wanted to have things standardized as much as possible. Because for us, next to the mainframe, we're quite a Microsoft shop, a .NET technology shop. So then it's quite logical if you want to move on with the older systems that you try to standardize as much as possible on the common stack of technology that we already have in house, and for which we have already the necessary processes and people and knowledge, skills, etc. in house. So I think that's a very big advantage in our concrete case.
And how is this helping you in your own relationship with your customers? Obviously, there are the advantages and the benefits are there for Sdworks. How do you follow these through for your customers? How does it improve your relationship, and how does it improve the customer experience?
Well, I think the key thing on the long term is that we will be able to, on one hand, provide change faster, or at least that's the goal, by modernizing the flow of development, applying the contemporary practices. The goal there is to do things more efficiently and more effectively, of course, which should allow us to have change implemented sooner, and which should have a positive influence towards the customers as well. On the other hand, we also see that the landscape is changing. In the past, it was classical value chain, starting from inputting the data, validating the data, calculating, and then all the external effects with output payslips, declarations, and so on. So it was really a static chain of a process chain. But now we are also moving more towards a platform way of thinking of our business, meaning that all these services should be able to be opened up separately, so not solely in the chain and in the interwoven chain as we know it from the legacy systems. And from that perspective, we need to be able to slice the elephant in pieces at a certain given time in order to accomplish that goal for the applications of the functionalities within that applications that need such type of platform support, and that requires us to carve out and re-implement certain services maybe, and with the Microfocus tooling and the modern development or contemporary development practices with Azure and so on, I personally believe that we are better positioned to do such type of work instead of residing on the mainframe with limited resources, difficult, like no tools available to properly re-engineer or re-architect code and so on. So I think that should be the main goals for us. And of course, once again, it's all about also keeping the legacy risks under control.
Do you feel that you have better visibility now how Sdworks is going to evolve in the next 10, 20, 30 years? Does this give you a clearer path for your company's future?
Well, when I'm reviewing that specifically in the context of the Belgian mainframe system, there I need to say that from my perspective, we've moved away from a dead end to a road where we have still various options available. I stated it earlier, we have a lot of functionalities residing on that system, but by doing the things that we are currently implementing, we can move on to various end goals, and that end goals could be different for each of the components even. But before starting this track, we were really somewhat in a dead end. And that dead end caused some people to become really nervous in the organization, because on the other end, we know what that engine, that payroll engine, for example, and the surrounding capabilities, what the related turnover, of course, is. So we definitely need to handle it with care.
Okay, and just to conclude, so that we've had that vision of the future from Sdworks. If I turn to Philippe from Microfocus, what can we expect next? What's coming up with Microfocus? What developments can we think about for the foreseeable future?
I think it's we're just going to continue what we've done for these 40 years. That means adapt to the new technology come along and bringing that technology into play, so that our customer can leverage all these new things. And if it's we saw cloud, we saw mobile, we treat that as it comes. We don't know what's going to be in there in the future, but we will still be providing new functionalities to help these customers embrace these new technologies.
And Richard Gamblin from Microsoft, is there any light that you can shine on the future of Azure and the help that you will be giving companies like Sdworks and your partnerships with companies like Microfocus?
Well, I think it's an incredibly exciting time at the moment, because we're seeing this ability to bring the most critical systems that organizations have, the most critical applications, and bring them closer to the latest cutting edge computational techniques, whether that's artificial intelligence or, in the not too distant future, technologies like quantum computing, and the ability to allow these to coexist and actively exploit each other. The options were pretty limitless. It's very exciting times.
Everything is changing, everything is moving forward, everything hopefully is moving forward in the right direction. I would like to thank very much Philippe van Gorp from Sdworks for joining us today, and Richard Gamblin from Microsoft, and also Philippe Leyland from Microfocus.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks everyone for this very interesting discussion, and thank you to you for tuning in. Look out for us on LinkedIn and the other social networks. We will be back soon with more content. Thank you very much.